Hello, there is Phumlani M. Majosi. I am back. This is the Phumlani Majosi show, where we give you a black conservative perspective on local and global socio-economic affairs. I'm back in South Africa. I had a great time in Kenya. I met some wonderful people, signed a few copies of my book, Lessons from Past Heroes. So Nairobi, I really had a great time when I was there. Um, Three stories I want to cover this week. The first one is I have a big question for you folks. I see many South Africans on X and other various social media platforms. They put Palestinian flags on their bios or next to their names on social media, especially on X, what used to be called Twitter, of course. People write their names, many. You see many people there. They write their names and then they put a Palestinian flag. I have a question, folks. To you, the people who do that, when are you going to put the flags of Nigeria, right? When are you going to put the flags of Sudan? When are you going to put, the flags of DR Congo? Why do I say that? Listen, thousands and thousands of Christians have been slaughtered in Nigeria, right? In fact, apparently more than 52,000 Christians have been slaughtered, killed in Nigeria since 2009. We hear often about Christians being slaughtered, dismembered alive in Nigeria. Cruelty, um, the way they are treated, the way they are killed, it is just shocking, very, very shocking. And the Nigerian government has failed to protect its citizens. I was speaking to one of the Nigeria analysts recently, Olumayowa Oketiran, and I asked him, Olumayowa, he's the chief of staff at Students for Liberty. I asked Mayowa, has the Nigerian government failed its people? If you have more than 52,000 Christians being slaughtered since 2009, every now and then you see shocking images, right, of Christians being slaughtered, bloodshed. Has the Nigerian government failed its people? Mayowa said yes. Olumayowa, he said yes. The Nigerian state has failed its people. And then the question is, if we are going to put Palestinian flags, right, next to our names, of course, showing this emotion and support for Palestinians, which is what I see on X, when are you going to support the victims or the people that are dying, right? Um, from the atrocities that are taking place in Africa. When are going to support? When are we going to see the flag of Nigeria next to your names? That is the question I am asking. When are we going to see the Sudanese flag? Because remember, there is an ongoing war in Sudan right now, a war that has displaced more than 8 million people, right? This war, just over the past year, the war in Sudan has displaced more than 8 million people, right? There's starvation, there's hunger, right? Things are getting worse. More than 8 million people displaced, thousands killed, right? From the Sudanese war. Why are you not putting those flags next to your name, right? Because you care so much about victims of violence. Why are you so invested? You do a lot to show your emotions for something that is happening in the Arab world that most of us, in fact, all of us in Africa, have no control of, right? Maybe we can, not that maybe, we can reshape things in our African continent to beef up security, but there is really nothing we can do about the violence in the Middle East. Yet many of you are more invested there, right? You do all you can to show the emotions about what's happening there in the Middle East. Why don't you put the flags of Sudan, Nigeria, as thousands of people die and they face starvation, being displaced, from their homes, right? And then there's DR Congo, the ongoing war, the ongoing conflict there in Eastern Congo between the M23 rebels and Congolese forces. It's displaced thousands, more than 230,000 people have been displaced from their homes by the conflict there. The conflict between M23 rebels and Congo forces, right? It's displaced thousands of people. Hunger, starvation, is getting worse. It's getting out of hand there, out of hand. Yet, I don't see the flags, profile pictures, folks. Sorry, in your bios next to your names on social media. I don't see that. You don't even bother to discuss all those things, right? Yet you care so much about what happens in the Middle East. Now I'm saying to you, check your principles and values. If it's really about concern for for victims of violence, then start in your own continent, where Black people who look like you, these are Black people, right? Who look like most of you on social media. They look like you, and they are being slaughtered. When are you going to really talk about them and express them, the emotion? Now, I want you to reflect on that, right? Unless, of course, there's a reason. There's another reason why you are more emotionally invested in what's happening in the Middle East than what's happening here. But then don't tell us that it's about human rights, okay? Don't tell us that. Don't tell us that it's about human rights, because really, if it were about that, you would have started right here in your continent, where you have some serious issues around brutality, violence, abuse of human rights, right? You should have started here. Now, that too is what I want to leave you with respect to that. The second story I want to talk to you about, this is very important. So we are hearing that the government, our government, through the Department of Social Development and Border Management Authority, what they will do is that they want to ensure that the kids who come through the border, right? These are Zimbabwean kids who come into our country, that those are unaccompanied kids, the kids walking alone, entering the country. They should have what? They should have some formal documents or passports. In other words, they are telling us that they are going to have to do more of their job, or the job they are supposed to do, right? How is it that there is even a situation where you have young kids coming over, obviously illegally, with no documents, being unaccompanied, coming into the country? How does that happen, right? Tells you that something is wrong on the border. It again points to the problems we've heard for years now under the ANC, the failure to control our borders, right? Our borders, people can just walk in from other countries anyhow, right? There's no security, and also some corruption has been reported, and that's a very big problem, folks. We have to strengthen, make our borders very strong if we want to remain a country. Now, I must be clear here, because I don't want to be, I'm a classical liberal, hence I do believe that really we need to encourage more immigrants to come into the country. But I strongly believe that has to be the immigrants that we need. It has to be the immigrants whose skills we need in this country. In fact, I am delighted to hear that the government is working, toward relaxing the visa regulations for people who are skilled in the country, because we need more of these people, right? We have shortage of skills. Even the government is recognizing that we have the shortage of skills. We need to import these skills to come here, the skills we don't have, to help our economy to be more productive, to push the growth rate to what we need of +4, 5% or so, right? Because currently we are growing at less than 1%, which is just dismal, right? We need skills, folks. We do need the skills. Hence, we must make it easier for people who are skilled, for foreigners who are skilled, to come through, to come to our country, right? So I'm not against immigration, but I'm totally against with the idea that people can just walk into our country, right? And do whatever they want, obviously. So there must be control of who comes into this country, but it must be in a relaxed way. It shouldn't be made difficult for people who are supposed to be here and who we need. And then we shall see how that goes. That cooperation between the Department of Social Development as well as the Border Management Authority. Of course, they will be collaborating with Zimbabweans. They've said they must do their job, right? So far over the past decades, our border control has been a total mess. We've had some serious problems of immigration. We need to address those immigration problems. The last story I want to talk to you about, which I think this one is very important, folks, because really it's about our relations with the United States, right? Um, they are really at a it's disappointing to see what is happening with our relations with the USA. And I do think that there is much work to be done, because otherwise, if we don't get our relations right, it's going to be a problem. Congressman John James, who has been vocal about South Africa's relations with the US, expressing some serious concern that South Africa is, aligning itself. It's not only him in America. The perception amongst the America's politicians, the business elite, the view now is that South Africa is aligning itself with Russia, China, Iran, and that is alarming for them. And they are right. It has been the case under the ANC. We have been seeing that over the past years. Now, Congressman he wrote this week for the Daily Maverick, and where he's basically saying that for a stronger partnership between the US and South Africa, South Africa has to meet the US, halfway, right? They've been concerned with the fact that, of course, this thing got worse when South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice and accused Israel, America's strongest ally, of genocide in its war against Hamas, right? So it really was a serious concern for many in America, right, that South Africa could do that. John James is saying serious concerns. And by the way, this is after, which is very important to highlight. This is after the U.S. South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act, right, passed the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee. So it passed. This was early last week. So that review act that has been proposed to review the U.S.-South Africa relations, it did pass the first hurdle last week. Some people were saying it's not going to pass. Well, folks, it did pass. It did pass the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee early last week. Of course, the next step now is probably, I think it's going to go through to the House of Representatives, but it passed the first hurdle. So we must take this issue seriously, because the atmosphere in the US now, the perception, the thinking, the opinion is that South Africa is aligning itself with Iran, China, Russia, and South Africa is becoming an enemy of of the US. And that is concerning, folks. If that is the atmosphere, if that is the climate of opinion, we should be concerned, because remember, South Africa and the US, really there is much that's going on between those two countries. And even Congressman John James has highlighted that. For example, let's look at the US-South Africa trade, right? South Africa, the United States is our second biggest trading partner behind China, right? And from our US-Africa trade, it increased from 2010 from $13.9 billion, right, in 2010 to $21 billion in 2021, right? So that was an increase of trade between South Africa and the US, right? And then USA is South Africa's, of course, I've just said that, South Africa's second trading partner. The United States, right, has helped South Africa a lot in fighting AIDS or HIV/AIDS, right? It has provided $8 billion to South Africa since 2003 to do what? To fight HIV/AIDS. AIDS used to be a killer in this country. AIDS used to be, if you had AIDS, you had a death sentence. That was what it was, right? But that has changed now, and the United States has helped heavily to, to fight HIV/AIDS in South Africa. The fact that we have the death rates have really declined dramatically or drastically over the past, 23 years or so, right? It's because the United States has really helped heavily to fight HIV, HIV/AIDS through a program that that channels money into South Africa to fight AIDS, and they've really helped in that. So that is significant, folks. We must take that seriously, right? And of course, we are beneficiaries of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. So we are getting some good benefits there as we trade with the United States in terms of it's easy for our goods to enter the market. It's really helped us to bolster our trade with the US in terms of trade restrictions, taxes as well, duties and all those things. So we are beneficiaries in that sense, that we are not really our trading with the US. The US has made it easy for us to be able to to trade our goods with them through the AGOA program. Now that is very important, folks. We must never really think that is not important, because we need a strong economy. We need to strengthen the trade ties with the US. Now, the fact that we have this act where they are reviewing our relations or their relations with us, it's concerning. It's the consequences, it's the result, it's the repercussions of what I call ill-thought foreign policy from the ANC, right? It's an ill-thought foreign policy, and now we have to suffer the consequences of that, or the repercussions of that, folks. So, I mean, it's really concerning. And also this past weekend, a very important article in the Wall Street Journal, right? By the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal this past weekend, where the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal highlighted that South Africa is aligning itself with Russia, China, and Iran, right? In other words, this is really is aligning itself with the enemies of the United States of America. That is not a plus for us, folks. The Wall Street Journal highlighted that. So it was a very important article, and I think it's positioned well. It's got to be something that we think of as a people of South Africa. Those are the few issues I wanted to talk to you about this week. It's Good Friday. I hope you have a great long weekend. And of course, remember to get my copy of Lessons from Past Heroes at the nearest store, at the nearest bookstore, or wherever you may be. The book will be available there. My column will be coming, as you know. I publish a column on Politics Web, and basically my upcoming column is about, I'm looking at Israel, right? The way Israel is being treated as it is fighting Hamas terrorists in the Middle East. Not only Hamas, fighting Hezbollah, fighting the Houthis, right? These are all terror groups that are funded by Iran. Israel is in a tough spot there, defending itself against all these terror groups. And we need to, in the column that's coming up, I'm saying, look, we need to commend Israel for its really fight against these terror groups. Remember, I'm on X at Phumlani M Majosi. That's my handle. I'm also on Facebook as well at Phumlani M Majosi. I have a Facebook page. I'm on Instagram at Phumlani M Majosi. I'm on LinkedIn if you're a professional, Phumlani M Majosi. Yeah, my website as well, very important, phumlanimajosi.com. That's where I publish my content. Whenever I have published a column on Politics Web or wherever it may be, I also, republish that on my website, phumlanimajozi.com. Have a great long weekend. We'll chat soon.